That means, why are we here? I agree.
I'm going to flip.
And the weather's better there.
Tiny violin playing for you, Hannity. We've already decided we're all moving to Texas.
Are you going to make me throw papers at you again?
Yes, exactly. Come visit us soon. We had a great show tonight, Hannity.
All right, you two. Have a great show, Laura.
All right, I'm Laura Ingraham. This is the Ingraham Angle from a very busy news night here in Washington. We still have no suspect or motive in the case of those devices sent to prominent Democrats in the last few days. But that has not stopped some media organizations from what I think is despicable finger-pointing, and we'll have it for you. Plus, we received some very interesting details about these bombs from authorities today. Yet some media folks, they just don't want to talk about it. We'll examine. And last night's Florida gubernatorial debate revealed an ugly truth about some Democratic tactics. Level unfounded charges of racism, and then you win the argument. Candace Owens will be here later in the hour to break down the left's new rules. But first, the Democrats' convenient case of amnesia. That's the focus of tonight's angle. Now, at this point, it seems the bomb-like materials sent to prominent Democrats and CNN weren't meant to detonate, but they were meant to intimidate and sow fear. And predictably, the left and their journalist brethren are blaming President Trump.
Law enforcement investigators are obviously right now, I'm sure, noticing that all of the recipients have been the targets of wrath from President Trump.
He has frequently channeled his supporters' rage toward people or groups that he sees as his political enemies, some of whom were targeted by today's bombs.
He's distracting from that, and that idea of what atmosphere we have in our country right now, and he's not doing anything to really tone that down.
The impulse to blame the president takes us back to the issues of basic fairness and common sense, two qualities that seem to be in short supply these days. It's irresponsible and it's outrageous for these folks to even imply that somehow these dastardly acts were provoked by our commander-in-chief. And the media wonder why the American people have increasingly little respect for them. And plus, where was their outrage and fury when prominent Democrats were either just personally and viciously insulting conservatives or actually using aggressive action toward them?
And if you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd. And you push back on them.
The press always asks me, don't I wish I were debating him? No, I wish we were in high school. I could take him behind the gym.
You cannot be civil with a political party that wants to destroy what you stand for, what you care about.
No toxicity there at all. No urging of aggressive rhetoric or aggressive attitudes. And where was all the media and Democrat outrage when Hollywood made threats and showcased bloody depictions of the president?
It's William Shakespeare's play Julius Caesar like you've never seen before. A man dressed to look like President Donald Trump gets stabbed to death on stage.
Of course I want to punch him in the face.
Right. Yes!
I won't give away what we're doing, but Tyler and I are not afraid to do images that make noise.
I wonder, I liked the hair better before, right?
I have thought an awful lot about blowing up the White House.
When was the last time an actor assassinated a president?
I'm going to say one thing. Trump.
Oh, sorry. I guess that constitutes high art in America these days. Well, not only was there no criticism from the left, they were applauding this stuff. And they just love these ugly personal confrontations. Ones like this. And they're so nasty, all the different stuff, and whether it's the stores or the restaurants, the elevators. I don't recall folks like Joe Scarborough asking if Hillary or Maxine's rhetoric led to all this harassment and viciousness. I think the Democrats have just gotten so wrapped around the axle about Trump and all this stuff he's achieved and his numbers are going up that they've adopted a by any means necessary strategy to get him out of power. And by not strongly and repeatedly condemning the group's destructive activities and the methods, I think in a way you could argue that they've become the party by default of Antifa. And let's stop comparing, by the way, the Tea Party to Antifa, as some on the left have strained to do. I heard that today. Last time I checked, the Tea Partiers like dress up like Betsy Ross and so forth. They were gathering and debating about how to stop Obamacare and stop future bailouts, arguing about TARP and stuff like that. The Tea Party was interested in driving people to the polls in 2010, not driving people from the public square. And now in the wake of these bomb mailings, it is amusing, if not disturbing, to watch the Pied Pipers of chaos, the fomenters of harassment, try to flip the script.
All of you guys, I'm so glad that you're here and alive today because we could have been mourning you guys.
I do know in my heart that President Trump bears a lot of responsibility for rhetoric that made it almost inevitable that top Democrats and the media would be targeted.
I think the President of the United States has been dog whistling to his constituency. I think that they're acting out what they believe the President wants them to do and the way that he wants them to act.
This is a woman who said, basically go find them wherever they are, at a gas station, a restaurant, wherever they are in public. My friends, we all remember what happened more than a year ago, June of 2017, when a Trump-hating Bernie Sanders supporter, and yes, it was all verified, James Hodgkinson, opened fire on a Republican baseball practice. There could have been 12 people killed, not one nearly killed, of course, as Congressman Steve Scalise was. And when some began looking for a political explanation for the shooting, do you remember what Nancy Pelosi at the time said?
So this sick individual does something despicable, and it was horrible what he did, hateful. But for them to all of a sudden be sanctimonious as if they never seen such a thing before. I think that the comments made by my Republican colleagues are outrageous. Beneath the dignity of the job that they hold, how dare they say such a thing?
How dare anyone ascribe any type of connection to a nasty, horrible, criminal act with tonality or atmospherics? In the aftermath of the Scalise shooting, there was no examination of how Democratic rhetoric might have contributed to the violence. And there certainly were no apologies from the left. I don't think all that many people demanded apologies. But now, in a joint statement with Chuck Schumer, Pelosi is actually trying to blame the president for these suspicious packages. She said in a statement, time and time again, the president has condoned physical violence and divided Americans with his words and actions. Okay, well, where was she last year when Maxine Waters, she's now the queen of the lefty speaker circuit, was making threats like this?
And with this kind of inspiration, I will go and take Trump out tonight.
She wasn't talking about, out to dinner, by the way. Now, the selective moral outrage is revealing what most Americans should already know. The left basically wants to impose what's tantamount to a college speech code or a college code of conduct on the rest of us, where the left gets to speak, hate, and pretty much do whatever they want with impunity. But the rest of us have to watch every word, every emphasis. But I think the American people are smarter than the Democrats give them credit for. And I think they see through attempts like this to limit speech and politicize the acts of a few lunatics. Here's what's really going on. In the face of Kavanaugh, the caravan, and the tightening polls, the Democrats and their press enablers are hoping that the horrific events of the last 48, 72 hours will in some way serve to stem the GOP's late surge. The public will suddenly look at them as, look at what you did, look at what you created. And in order to do this, they will need to silence Donald Trump on the stump, and it rhymes. They want to distract voters and keep the great closer, which he is, on script, force the president to be more like a conventional politician on the trail and thus less effective. Well, good luck with that. This cynical ploy will not work. Most Americans know real evil when they see it. And they know what political opportunism is and that it can sometimes spring from that very evil. And that's the angle. Joining me now, Jeffrey Lord is a contributing editor to the American Spectator and former aide to President Ronald Reagan. And with me in studio is Drew Littman, is a former chief of staff to former Democratic Senator Al Franken. Drew, I'll give you the first crack. Now, you heard Nancy Pelosi there in the angle. It was an outrage for Republicans to worry about the Democrats' demonization of Trump and Republicans, and how could you do that? But in this case, the script is flipped, is it?
Well, what's different here is that Donald Trump is president. He commands the military. You mentioned he's the commander-in-chief, as well as federal law enforcement. When he makes a threat, what sounds like a threat, it has a different kind of potency. But even during the campaign, he urged his supporters at a rally to apply Second Amendment remedies to Hillary Clinton if she was elected. That could only mean shooting her. He also said that she ought to have her Secret Service detail pulled, and we should see what happens. Clearly, he contemplated some kind of physical danger for her, and now that
you're saying tonight that you believe that Donald Trump wants physical harm to happen to Mrs. Clinton? Really?
I believe that's what he expressed, yes. Do I think what
I actually don't think Democrats want physical harm to come to Republicans. Most, I mean, some of the restaurants maybe want to provoke some, reaction on the part of the Republicans. If someone was like this close to your face and your child was next to you, you probably wouldn't say, hi, want to sit down and join us? You'd probably be pretty ticked off, wouldn't you?
Completely.
Yeah. So a lot of people are trying to provoke a reaction. But Maxine Waters says, go where they are. Go to the gas station. Eric Holder said, when they hit us, we kick them.
Yep.
Hillary Clinton, we can't be civil. Holding up a decapitated head of the president, getting applause when you say F the president.
Kathy Griffin doesn't speak for the Democratic Party.
They are applauded. They are lauded. Maxine Waters goes to every award show that I can think of and is basically the toast of the town after what she said.
President Trump made her the toast of the town by singling her out for attacks. Now, she's the only one out of 435 members of Congress to get one of these bombs in the mail. You think that's not because of the rhetoric President Trump uses? He abuses her at every rally. I mean, she's his favorite target.
Jeffrey Lord, your reaction.
Laura, look, there is a climate of hate in the liberal media, and all of it is directed at the president. You know, CNN and Jeff Zucker and I used to work there, my old boss. I still like him. I love and respect all my former colleagues over there, and doubtless they have been put through hell the last couple days. But, I would just say that running these constant chyrons and everything, blaming the president, inferring that the president was responsible for this, we have no idea who did this. Absolutely no idea whatsoever. And I would just say to them, stop, stop, stop. Jeff, for God's sake, stop this. What's really dangerous about this, Laura, is Jeff's logic. And I want to read one sentence to you. This is from an Illinois paper. And the sentence, it was a letter to the editor. And the sentence reads this way. One of my favorite TV shows is the Rachel Maddow show on MSNBC, unquote. The guy who wrote that, Laura, is the guy who shot Steve Scalise. Now, words matter, Jeff Zucker says, and these other folks are saying. If words matter, what they're really saying is that MSNBC and Rachel Maddow, who are virulently anti-Trump, are responsible for the Scalise shooting. That's just a bunch of hooey. That is very, very dangerous. And I'll tell you, what's really bad about this is, God forbid that something happens to the president or Sarah Sanders or some member of this administration. This kind of argument will whirl around in a heartbeat, and fingers will be pointed at CNN or MSNBC, and they'll try and lay the responsibility on them, and that is wrong.
Well, it's all an attempt to circumscribe speech. I mean, look, I always think more speech is better. I don't calling everybody's when everybody's Hitler, nobody's Hitler. When everybody's racist, nobody's. I mean, it demeans true evil and true evil intent. When you want physical harm to occur, to happen to someone, whoever mailed these things, whether they wanted those things to go off or not, some people are saying they didn't. This is an evil intent. We understand that. We know that.
Exactly right.
Connecting political
Whoever does
speech,
this is responsible.
Unless you're saying go hit them or go. I think it's a very dangerous territory people are walking into here. But Jeff, you just touched on this, and take a listen to what CNN's John King said today.
No one's blaming the president. Is anyone blaming the president? But the president now wants to make this about him.
Well, did you look down when you were talking, John? The lower third on the screen says, CNN, Trump has no plan to claim any personal responsibility for inciting serial bomber. Here's another one. manhunt for serial bomber going after Trump's targets. Drew, is that defensible on CNN's part?
Perfectly defensible. He said
they're not blaming Trump. They're clearly blaming Trump in their lower third, otherwise known as the lower third chyron.
I think they're not blaming Trump emphatically enough. These are Trump targets. They're the people he has cited. He refers to people as traitors. They've committed treason. They're enemies of the state. He offered to pay if his supporters would beat up protesters. He offered to pay their legal fees. That's very specific.
So when someone equates... I actually have a lot of respect for Rachel Maddow. I think she does a great show. I don't agree with her on anything.
Yeah.
But I say that. People are probably going to hate me, the fact that I say that. But I'm going to say that, okay? If I were a liberal, I'd watch Rachel Maddow. But when you have someone like Maxine Waters saying, go out and do this, when people repeatedly are calling Trump like Hitler, I mean, people, if they could have stopped Hitler, they would have. So you're saying that has no connection to anything that would happen to a supporter of the president's, like Steve Scalise, wouldn't happen to, if something happened to the president, would you then connect those claims of Hitlerism to the assassination attempt? Would you do it both ways?
Are you suggesting that Steve Scalise was shot because of Democratic rhetoric? Is that what you're saying?
The president has repeatedly been called Pol Pot, Stalin, Hitler, pretty much every dictator rolled into one, on a continual loop in left-wing media, of which James Hodgkinson devoured on a daily basis. So you think I'm saying, I actually agree you can't do that. You want to do it one way, but not the other way, which is convenient, which is what the angle was about.
How did Republicans talk about Obama? Remind me. Did they not say he was a dictator?
A dictator?
He was a foreigner?
Well, if you said you're a dictator, you're just, it's idiotic, okay? People say idiotic things. The left used to be about free speech. The left now is about college speech codes and circumscribing speech. Less speech or more speech. And by the way, I defended your former boss. When they tried to throw him out, I was one of the few people on TV who said, let the voters decide.
I appreciate
Not a lot of people did that. And he and I...
That is true.
He's been really nasty to me, and I actually defended him. So, gentlemen, thank you so much. As the Hoover Institution's Victor Davis Hanson writes, we're reaching a tipping point of civil strife not seen maybe since the 1960s, and it seems that the rules of discourse are being dictated, in this case solely by the left. Victor Davis Hanson is the author of The Second World Wars, and he joins us now. Victor, you've been hearing the conversation. Your reaction to what you've heard so far tonight?
Yeah, I think Americans are just tired of this instant virtue signaling and wounded fawn victimization when we don't know any of the facts of this incident. And they want symmetry. There's no rules in the arena. We don't know what the relationship is between violent or edgy speech and violent acts. We've been told, and I agree with that, I believe in free speech, that there's no connection between James Hodgkinson shooting Steve Scalise necessarily and 2 years of the type of speech you played. If that's true, then there's no connection between Trump being sort of over the top in some of his rallies and this incident to what extent. But that's not what we're getting. We're getting an asymmetrical idea that when progressives use edgy speech, it has no concrete ramifications, and when a conservative doesn't say nearly as much or as violent rhetoric, it does. And I just don't think that's a proposition people can accept. And if it were true, then you would see tomorrow, just think of it, Maxine Waters, Joe Biden, Eric Holder, they would just cease all of their violent speech, all of their rhetoric for the next 2 years because they've made the argument in the case of Trump that it will lead to something. But I don't think they will cease it. And if you do think that we need to curb our speech, there's ways to deter it. If you can say, you know what, you cannot imagine, promote, advocate the killing or the assassination of the president, cutting his head off, burning him up, blowing him off. We don't want that, and if you might have to take a time out. You'll have a 90-day cooling off period and no-fly list on flights. I think that would stop it tomorrow if you believe that was necessary. Or if you had somebody go to campus and you get physical, these are very elite people, they have career trajectories that are quite ambitious, maybe you could charge them with a felony, or the people in the streets of Portland, and that would deter it if you wanted to do that. So we have mechanisms to make the argument between violent, edgy speech and violent acts. The problem
let me give another example, Victor.
Yeah,
I want to give us, I'm sorry to interrupt, I want to give another example of some of the violent, edgy speech. Barack Obama, when he came on the campaign trail, magnetic speaker, historic. This was 2008. Remember, I remember this well. This was in Philadelphia, June 13th. If they bring a knife to the fight, we bring a gun. because from what I understand, folks in Philly like a good brawl. I've seen Eagles fans. Now, I know he doesn't really mean he wants to bring a gun to a fight. But again, if a conservative says something like that, it's how dare you're in the pocket of the NRA. How dare you say something? So like everyone's like walking on tenterhooks if you're on the right. But if you're on the left, cut his head off, get in her face, make Susan Collins cower in an elevator, and then you get the hero's welcome at the next Grammys.
And that was very influential because Cory Booker channeled Barack Obama when he advocated people getting to use Barack Obama's words that he embraced, get in their faces, in the way that Eric Holder also talked about taking a gun to a knife fight. So they were influential, but I agree with you. They didn't result in concrete action.
Victor, we'll see you on radio tomorrow, I hope. And up next, more on those devices sent to various Democrats around the country and what they could tell us perhaps about the perpetrator. We're into the facts next segment.
And we're told by several officials that, fortunately, the devices they've been able to examine so far appear to have been poorly made. They apparently contain a number of flaws. Taped to the side, an electrical circuit, apparently a timer, though its exact function isn't yet understood. Nor is it clear what was supposed to set the packages off.
Reports tonight reveal that some of the suspected mail bombs addressed to high-profile Democrats were simply not capable of exploding. The others have yet to be analyzed, but it is thought that they will suffer from similar flaws. So what might any of this tell us about the motive and perhaps the skill of the perpetrator? Has this been hyped, or is the caution and the attention it's getting warranted? Joining us now to discuss is Danny Colson, the former Deputy Assistant Director of the FBI and was the lead agent investigating that horrific Oklahoma City bombing. And Ryan Morris is an explosives training expert, founder of Tripwire Operation Group. Ryan, given your expertise in this field, what can we take away from the fact that these devices appear, at least to what we know now, to be all duds?
Well, Laura, I have 24 years as a police officer. I've been a bomb squad commander, a supervisory explosive specialist with the Department of Homeland Security. I've looked at thousands of x-rays. And today, when I saw the x-ray that was put out through the media, immediately, the people that work with me every day at Tripwire, we looked at it and said there is no way in any form or fashion, the x-ray that we looked at, that device would function. And then when we looked at the pictures that were put out there, the actual device itself, it looks very, as we term it, Mickey Mouse. The device, it was very crude. It's a PVC pipe. It's got a red and a black wire, very Hollywood, indicators like what would be in a Hollywood movie. And then, of course, that timer, that digital timer that's present there. None of that would be, what a real bomber would want to do. If it was a real bomber, Laura, it would be somebody that's going to send a device through the mail that would be victim actuated when it gets there. A timer is not an effective means of a deployment.
Danny, Chris Cuomo said something a little bit different about what he considered to be Governor Cuomo, about this device. Let's watch.
It is wrong to say, in my opinion, that these are fake bombs. There is a question as to whether or not the bombs were designed to detonate or to intimidate.
Do they have a sense?
The question is the motivation.
Danny.
That's laughable. Laura, I commanded the Oklahoma bombing investigation, and I've been to bomb school, and I've been the victim of an IED. I know how these things work. And either this guy is the Alfred E. Newman of bomb makers, or he had no intention of these things going off. As your other guest said, this looks like a movie prop. And then you have to get to the point of what then is the purpose. And I tend to believe that the purpose is not to hurt anybody, because these things are not capable of injuring people, and that's verified by the technicians that have examined them. So then what is the story? I think it's theater. I think it's definitely theater, and I think it's messaging. And I think that is the distinction here. It's almost a joke, and it's not a joke because we take it seriously. But this thing is not a bomb. It doesn't have the components of a bomb. No bomber makes a bomb out of PVC pipe because it doesn't restrict the explosion and cause it to accelerate and hurt people. So it looks more like a movie prop, and the whole thing is designed for theater. It's like a firebug who sets a fire so he can see the fire trucks come him. It's almost like that, or some kind of messaging. And I think that's where we're going to find out once the FBI and ATF and the NYPD resolve this thing. I think that's where we're going.
Danny, I was talking to a friend of mine who's always on these Israeli message boards today, and he said, I guess the guys who do the stuff you guys do in Israel they're not laughing at what it was horrible and it scares people, but that what you guys said, it just looks ridiculous. Like anyone who wants to do harm does not construct something in this type of, it looks like, I guess one of them said it looked like a flashlight connected with a, like a little baby alarm clock or something. It just looked absurd. So what does this tell us, perhaps, Danny, about motivation, other than I want to get attention? Well,
I think that's a great question. I think it's one of two things, and I'm probably not going to be popular for saying this, but it's either to send a message to these people that we're watching you and we're coming after you and to try to intimidate them, or it's maybe even possibly to create sympathy for them. And I don't know where it's going to come out. But
Ryan,
those are the two
Ryan
possibilities.
let's get Ryan in on this. Ryan, motivation, given, as you guys described, the kind of the prop-like quality, Mickey Mouse quality of these devices.
The only thing to be would be to intimidate or to cause fear or panic initially here. I can't, these aren't functional devices. They sent them all over the place, in my opinion as well, and I agree with your other guests. These devices are just meant to intimidate or cause fear.
Well, but Chuck Todd, we just have to play this one soundbite, guys. Chuck Todd on MSNBC said this today. It's real quick.
I have this fear that it could be some Russian operation, too, designed to do what's happening now.
I'm just saying it's a
it is
very
dividing us.
Danny, Russians.
Well, the Russians make really good bombs, and most people I dealt with in my career, they all make good bombs, too. This was not a bomb. It's a fake. It's a prop, and the motive we'll find out. The FBI will find this guy. There's so many opportunities to collect evidence, and the fact that they have so many devices that are intact, they will take those devices apart, and they'll trace the components back to the guy who built it.
All right, guys, thank you so much. Fascinating stuff. And could this be the end of the line for lawyer to the porn stars Michael Avenatti? A blistering criminal referral against him was just handed to DOJ by Senator Chuck Grassley. Details next.
It was getting to be a struggle.
Oh, a bombshell criminal referral dropped by the Senate Judiciary Committee today calls for a criminal investigation into the accusations against Brett Kavanaugh made by Michael Avenatti and Julie Swetnick. Joining us to discuss the details is Fox News chief national correspondent Ed Henry. Ed, what is the latest tonight?
Well, Laura, good to see you. More trouble for Michael Avenatti, starting with the fact that Senate Judiciary Chair Chuck Grassley is pressing the Justice Department to investigate whether he and his client, Julie Swetnick, conspired to provide false statements to Congress and tried to obstruct the Senate investigation during that confirmation battle over Justice Kavanaugh. Swetnick alleged without any corroborating evidence that Kavanaugh was involved in gang rapes during high school, but then gave varying accounts. Grassley declaring in the criminal referral to the Attorney General Jeff Sessions and the FBI Director Chris Wray, quote, "In the heat of partisan moments, some do try to knowingly mislead the committee. That's unfair to my colleagues, the nominees, and others providing information who are seeking the truth. It stifles our ability to work on legitimate lines of inquiry. We can't just brush aside potential violations. I don't take lightly making a referral of this nature, but ignoring this behavior will just invite more of it in the future." Now, in a brief interview today with Fox, Avenatti lashed out at Grassley, saying this is clearly political, and then he added this at a news conference in New York.
We welcome the investigation requested by Senator Grassley, who obviously has no idea what he's just done. What he has effectively done is he has now opened up a Pandora's box, and my client and I are very much looking forward to a full and complete investigation.
Though now some on the left appear to be turning on Avenatti and his dream of running for president, VanityFair.com running a piece mocking the lawyer for suffering two setbacks this week. One, a multi-million-dollar judgment for failing to repay a debt to a former colleague. The other, a court order evicting him from his Newport Beach offices after not paying rent for 4 months. Vanity Fair declaring, quote, both lawsuits suggest a downright Trumpian habit of racking up debts and evading responsibility when the bill came due. And interesting, tweets basically attacking Grassley and Kavanaugh today from Planned Parenthood Action and NARAL, which put together the same exact statement declaring, quote, we still believe Julie Swetnick, hashtag believe survivors. That led conservatives to tweet back,
What about believing alleged survivors of rape and sexual assault that have accused Democrats like Juanita Broderick? Laura?
Thanks so much, Ed. And joining us now is former federal prosecutor John Lauro. John, thanks for being here tonight. Now, you called this referral substantial. Tell us why.
It reads like a prosecution memo, which really lays out a compelling case, particularly against Ms. Swetnick. And what Senator Grassley has done, he's very careful, by the way, and very thorough, but he lays out a case where she submitted an affidavit, and I have it here before me, where she makes very specific allegations that Brett Kavanaugh, she became aware, was involved in spiking punch, was involved in targeting vulnerable women, young women, and actually participating in gang rapes. Now, that's what she submitted under oath, an affidavit, and then later she goes on TV and says, oh, you know, I really don't remember any of that, and thoroughly contradicts her affidavit. So what Grassley says is, listen, you can't submit a sworn statement to my committee and then go on TV and say something that's contradictory to that. That warrants an investigation of perjury and obstruction of justice. And frankly, I read it. This is a compelling document, and I think the FBI and the Department of Justice is going to investigate this.
So, John, the statutes involved, a number of them, false statements, 18 U.S.C. 1001, 18 U.S.C. 1505, obstruction of a congressional investigation, and then 18 U.S.C. 371, it's a conspiracy. Obviously, the two of them working together, there we go, perhaps with others. And there might be even more. I mean, this is just the very beginning of what we're seeing here. And I think it's really important that Senator Grassley does this, John, because otherwise, any nominee who they want to stop, it'll just be, oh, I heard this, and then, oh, no, I remember this 25 years ago, and oh, yeah, this the worst, most horrible accusations, unsubstantiated. Why not? There's no price to be paid. I'd go after this Feinstein leak, too. They should do a full and thorough investigation of Feinstein, and some of my friends were saying, maybe even some of the other accusers in this case. Did Christine Ford tell the truth? I don't know. But a lot of friends of Kavanaugh are very upset about this and think there was a lot of lying going on.
Well, I couldn't agree more. And what Senator Grassley is saying is you have to have respect for the process. When you submit a sworn affidavit to my committee, I expect it to be truthful. And if it's not, then you're going to suffer the penalties under criminal law. The other thing that Avenatti refused to do is allow Swetnick to be investigated by the committee. And that's very unusual if these allegations had some substance to them. But essentially what Senator Grassley is saying is you can't lie and disrupt corruptly my committee proceedings. And by the way, if that rule of law is not maintained, then the whole process becomes a sham. So he's doing exactly what he needs to do to ensure that justice is done.
Yeah, he's a showboating viper, if you ask me. Avenatti on with Casey Hunt back on September 30th. He was always promising, like that going out of business sale on the rug, the rug store, the Oriental rug store. We're going out of business. We lost our lease. And then it never goes out of business. He's always promising corroborating witnesses, and they never occur. Watch.
Are you aware of any people or potential witnesses who were at these parties who could corroborate your story?
Many witnesses. I've spoken to many witnesses. I've been clear for the last week that there are corroborating witnesses. We just didn't make this up out of whole cloth. I mean, I didn't just reach into the ether and find some woman to sign a false declaration.
Quick final thoughts, John.
Not one corroborating witness, and instead just a baseless accusation that almost destroyed a man's life.
All right, thanks so much. And John, we really appreciate it. And last night's debate between Andrew Gillum and Ron DeSantis in Florida revealed a troubling truth. When in a jam, Democrats cry racism. Candace Owens explains.
The question is, did you pay for the Hamilton ticket or did the undercover FBI agent pay for the Hamilton ticket? I'm a hardworking person. I know that may not fit your description of what you think people like me do, but I worked hard for everything that I've gotten in my life, and I don't need anybody handing me anything for free.
And that exchange points to what has become an uncomfortable truth for some GOP candidates this cycle. If you criticize a Democrat, you might just get tagged a racist. Is an honest debate even still possible? Joining me now with her reaction, Candace Owens, who is the communications director for Turning Point USA. Candace, do you see this as this is a convenient ploy? The left is doing it. Gillum obviously got in a big jam with perhaps potential bribe of a real estate developer. The FBI was clearly surveilling him, and he was willing to take these, tickets and other things. That's the question. It's nothing to do with his race and what color his skin is.
Yeah, I think when the argument is lost, they result to ad hominem attacks. And here's what I don't like about this. I feel like it really reinforces the bigotry of low expectations for the black community, meaning apparently we can't win based off of our own merit. We can't win a race based off of our own ideas. So what are we going to do? We're going to cry victim. We're going to say that we are being attacked because of the color of our skin. It's nasty and it's negative and it's pointedly wrong. And I also think it's a show of weakness from Andrew Gillum.
Yeah, he's kind of the new, the new thing in the Democrat Party. He's a new superstar.
Right.
I think he's trying to be almost an Obama type figure. It's kind of homespun. He gets on stage, and that's kind of charismatic.
Right.
Except when you look at the state of Florida, Tallahassee in particular, Tallahassee is the real problem city. He's been running Tallahassee.
Right.
And DeSantis said, if we want San Francisco to come to Florida, then yay. But you can't even say that, apparently.
Right. I mean, if you want Venezuela to come to Florida, 'cause he's truly pushing a socialist platform right now, which should terrify everybody. And he thinks, I'm going to be able to get away with this because I'm black, and I'm willing to throw down the black card. The black card needs to be expired, needs to be ripped up. You win based on good ideas, not because of the color of your skin in this country.
Candace, you had a really interesting event today with Turning Point. I got to see the pictures that Donnie Trump tweeted out. I think it was Donnie Trump tweeted out tonight. What was going on today?
We are having a massive Young Black Leadership Summit, all conservatives wearing MAGA hats, and the energy in that room, I can't even tell you. It's here.
I love it.
You can't stop it. Look, Black America is tired of being the victims that the left uses to gain power in this country. And we are here and showing up, and the president will address us tomorrow.
Wow. What time is that happening? I don't get any of the invitations. It's great.
11 a.m. and it's going to be at the White House, and I can't wait to hear what he has to say because this crowd is fired up. I mean, they're shouting, "Lock her up." I mean, it was something to be seen tonight.
There's not enough media coverage of interesting candidates. There's a Republican Muslim candidate in California who's running, Omar Qudrat. I might be getting his name wrong, but it's a difficult race, but it's fascinating. Obviously, you have John James running for Senate. John James, unbelievable, veteran, incredibly smart, combat pilot, but it's like he doesn't exist.
Oh, of course.
They don't know what to do.
Right. Well, because they think that there's something proprietary about black people. So when black people deviate, when I say they, I'm referring to the left, when black people deviate from the way that they think that we should think, they try to ignore us and to shove us under the rug. But I think time's up on that. I'm calling time's up on that.
What about college campuses? I know Turning Point does an enormous amount to fan out to college campuses. And this is something we've needed for so long. We have college conservative newspapers. Even those have been under assault. What has been the reaction? I know sometimes you get stuff thrown at you, but where's their badge of honor? As long as it's not going to hurt you or anything. But what's been the reaction among especially minority students when they talk to you, they see you, they meet you?
You're
nice. You're fun.
I know.
You're
I'm
a fun
really nice.
person.
In the beginning, last semester, we were met with so much protesting. The entire game has and mocking Beto for pretending to be Hispanic. We have a large Hispanic following, so something's working. They're starting to say maybe it's because Kanye West put on the MAGA hat, and people are starting to pursue different ideas. But this country is changing. I'm telling you. And listen, I say this all the time. Black Americans have nothing to fear when Donald Trump says he's going to make America great. We are Americans too.
Well, I think you're a weapon. You're a weapon in a good way, and I love it. I just love it. I love what you're doing. Thanks so much for being here. It's great to have you in studio.
Thank you for having me.
I might crash your event tomorrow. How do drug cartels operate inside caravans like the one we see approaching the U.S. border? Is it really happening? And what connection do they have to international terrorism? The former head of special ops for the DEA is here next. He has some shocking revelations. Stay there.
And mocking Beto for pretending to be Hispanic. We have a large Hispanic following, so something's working. They're starting to say maybe it's because Kanye West put on the MAGA hat, and people are starting to pursue different ideas. But this country is changing. I'm telling you. And listen, I say this all the time. Black Americans have nothing to fear when Donald Trump says he's going to make America great. We are Americans too.
Well, I think you're a weapon. You're a weapon in a good way, and I love it. I just love it. I love what you're doing. Thanks so much for being here. It's great to have you in studio.
Thank you for having me.
I might crash your event tomorrow. How do drug cartels operate inside caravans like the one we see approaching the U.S. border? Is it really happening? And what connection do they have to international terrorism? The former head of special ops for the DEA is here next. He has some shocking revelations. Stay there.
And mocking Beto for pretending to be Hispanic. We have a large Hispanic following, so something's working. They're starting to say maybe it's because Kanye West put on the MAGA hat, and people are starting to pursue different ideas. But this country is changing, I'm telling you. And listen, I say this all the time. Black Americans have nothing to fear when Donald Trump says he's going to make America great. We are Americans too.
Well, I think you're a weapon. You're a weapon in a good way, and I love it. I just love it. I love what you're doing. Thanks so much for being here. It's great to have you in studio.
Thank you for having me.
I might crash your event tomorrow. How do drug cartels operate inside caravans like the one we see approaching the U.S. border? Is it really happening? And what connection do they have to international terrorism? The former head of special ops for the DEA is here next. He has some shocking revelations. Stay there.